And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you our very special keynote speaker, Dr. Kirstin Ferguson. Kirstin lays claim to a seriously impressive list of achievements. Named by the Australian Financial Review as one of Australia's top 100 influential women in 2014, Kirstin is a non-executive director on a number of publicly listed private company and government boards and has been involved with the mining and resources sector for a number of years. Kirstin has a PhD in business focused on safety leadership and safety governance, as well as an honours degree in law and also arts. She's a Sir Winston Churchill Fellow, the current QUT Colin Brain Corporate Governance Fellow, and was previously named Australian Institute of Management's Brisbane Young Manager of the Year. She's an avid user of Twitter. She has 2,000 Twitter followers, and you can find her at Kirstin Ferguson. So I encourage you to tweet on. Ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome Dr. Kirstin Ferguson.
For all that influence, I can tell you it doesn't influence a 15-year-old teenage girl to clean her room, so I need to work on that. But standing here in front of a room of this size brings back memories for me of when I first learnt public speaking. At the time, I was a young 20-year-old, and I was a cadet at the Australian Defence Force Academy in the early 1990s. In my final year there, I ended up as the most senior female cadet and the second most senior cadet overall. And one of the things we had to do every week was stand in front of 1,000 cadets, generally all men, aged 17 to 20, outside with no microphone, and I would have to tell them about the week's events ahead. So I look back now and think you don't get public speaking training like that very often, and I'm very pleased to have a microphone today and not have to yell. But my early military career is a long way from where I find myself today. And this morning I wanted to share a couple of stories with you, as well as some advice I would have given myself. I was conscious it's the 10th anniversary of these awards, so some advice I perhaps would have given myself 10 years ago if I was given the opportunity. I then hope to finish with some thoughts for all of us on what we might like to achieve together in the future. I feel really privileged to have been invited to speak by the QRC to you this morning at this particular event on this particular day, given the priority I know the QRC places on improving female participation in the industry. Today we're here to recognise women within your industry, mining and resources, and while of course we'll have special recognition for the nominees and the winners, we also recognise every woman working in the sector, whether as an operator, an engineer, an executive or a trade specialist, whatever career you may have chosen. International Women's Day has a long legacy around the world of being a beacon for discussion about women's issues, such as gender equality, workplace participation, domestic violence, wage gaps. And there's much work being done by the Resources Council and others, and is still to be done on these incredibly important issues. The support of companies represented here today, through the structures you've established to attract and retain women, the flexibility you offer, and your willingness to challenge the status quo for women in your workplace is essential. And we thank you for this support and look forward to seeing even more in the future. But today, I don't plan to focus on gender issues. Hopefully it's obvious I'm a woman, and clearly there's also many other women in the audience today. So of course my perspective on all I've experienced is influenced by the fact that I'm a woman. But this morning, while celebrating International Women's Day, I'd like to make the bold suggestion that, well, for me anyway, my gender is the least interesting aspect about me. It's the only thing I had no power in choosing. It's the only thing in my life I've had no control over. Of course, I'm proud to be a woman, and I in fact don't know any other way to be. But far more interesting, in my view, are the choices I've made, the achievements I've had, the mistakes I've learnt from along the way. The theme of this year's breakfast is love what you do. Today I want to explore that idea a little, and I know for me, my life is not easily partitioned or segmented into what I might do from a work perspective and what I might do in the rest of my life. and how I have judged whether I loved what I was doing at any point in time has changed considerably over the past 10 years. Before I talk some more about that idea, I just wanted to tell you a little bit more about myself, things you won't read in the bio, but form an important part of what I love to do. So I'd like to talk to you from a personal perspective about my own experiences and how they've shaped the person that I am today. Now, not surprisingly, I love my family. I'm very proudly and happily married to my husband, Glenn, for about 20 years now, and we're the parents of 2 amazing teenage girls. I love to learn, and I have a wide range of interests. I have a degree in history, military history of all things, which is, I haven't yet found the use for that one, but it was interesting to do. I have a degree in law, and as you heard, I've just finished a PhD in business. I love speaking and writing about safety leadership and safety governance, which has become a bit of a passion of mine and was the field of my research. I enjoy connecting with others, as you heard. I love social media platforms, so feel free to connect online. It's incredible, some of the opportunities that are out there for us to connect in the world around us. I love watching sports, in particular rugby. I had a great couple of years as the first female director of Queensland Rugby Union. At this point, when I've spoken at other events with mainly men, no one listens to anything else, and then every question is about rugby. So I'm assuming that won't be the case here. But just quietly, when I was on the board, my first year on the Reds board, we won the Super Rugby Championship. I remember thinking, it's not so hard. Surely you just do this over and over. The second year, we then topped the conference. And I thought, oh, well, that's pretty good. And then once my term ended, it hasn't gone so well. So, there's no direct correlation. But and professionally, I love my role sitting on a number of boards. Most of them are corporate businesses. Some are very large public companies. Others are smaller private companies. And I also sit on a not-for-profit organisation in the theatre. So each organisation is completely different. Different people, different challenges, different cultures, different crises every day to confront. But each in its own way is incredibly challenging and also very rewarding. So I have a full and varied life and a wide network of colleagues and family and friends, and it's fair to say that generally I love what I do. But it was suggested that today I share with you a little bit about my story. So with your indulgence, I might just talk about that briefly and then reflect on the advice I would have given myself if I could magically go back in time 10 years ago. So my professional career had somewhat of an inauspicious start. I was at a very snooty private girls' school in Sydney, and I told them that I planned to join the military. Now, I was the first girl from this school to ever make such a suggestion, and I distinctly remember being told that this was not such a good idea. I'd done quite well at school, and so I had a wide range of options for what I could have done at university, but I had this real passion to join the Air Force, and I thought it was a great idea to go off to university, be paid to be there. It sounded like a lot of fun. So I ignored their advice, and at 17, I moved from Sydney at that point to Canberra, and I went to the Australian Defence Force Academy as a very young Air Force cadet. So I was at ADFA all through the early 1990s, which is now the subject of much review and fairly broad condemnation from government, media and the military themselves for their treatment of some female cadets at that time. And I understand why, since times were tough for many women at ADFA in that period. Yet I was very fortunate that the 4 years I spent at ADFA were largely very positive, and I ended up graduating as dux of my Air Force class of men and women. And I look back with a real sense of achievement at having done so well in that particular environment. Being at ADFA at that time taught me lifelong skills about leadership, resilience, courage, being part of a team, and hard work. I've largely spent my career in male-dominated industries since that time, and so I know as I look at each of you here today that these are many of the same qualities that we all share. ADFA also taught me the personal rewards and satisfaction that comes from taking on a challenge, sticking with it, even through difficult times, and coming out stronger for it, having learnt a huge amount about what you're capable of achieving. These are lessons that have stayed with me throughout my career. After I graduated from ADFA, I was a young Air Force officer, and I found myself posted to RAF Base Amberley, which is how I've come to live in my adopted home of Brisbane. At the time, I was 21 and single, and my first job was at one of the F-111 squadrons, and I was a walking cliche. I had clearly watched Top Gun too many times because I met my husband on about the second day. He was flying F-111s, and the rest was history. But professionally, An F-111 squadron was still very much a male-dominated environment, just as it had been at ADFA. I was the only female officer in the squadron, yet the leadership opportunities that this work offered at an incredibly young age is something I've been forever grateful for. I learnt more about influencing change, working cooperatively with others in a challenging environment, the importance of teamwork and again resilience than I perhaps could have gained elsewhere. So the years I spent in the early part of my career in the Air Force are years that I made the most of, seeking every leadership opportunity that I could and learning from every challenge. While I thoroughly enjoyed the earlier part of my career in the RAF, I always knew that I would move on to different things. I guess I'm a perpetual student because I started a law degree as soon as I'd finished ADFA, and I eventually moved to a large corporate law firm where I went into senior management roles while I completed my degree. It was also over this period that I had both my children. I did not completely leave the Air Force behind though. Around this period, I was fortunate enough to be awarded a Sir Winston Churchill Fellowship, and I investigated strategies for the ADF to provide support for bereaved families of those who were killed while serving in the military. My interest in the area arose after close friends were killed in the last F-111 crash, and the work was immensely satisfying to complete as I liaised with a large number of bereaved families, as well as working with the Pentagon and NASA and American Airlines and things on approaches to their high-profile disasters and how we might be able to learn from them. After I finished my law degree, I became admitted as a solicitor, and the arrangement with my law firm had always been once I was finished, I could choose sort of where I'd like to practice. When it came time for the crunch, I think I'd spent too much time at this particular law firm and realised generally in the industry how junior lawyers are treated. And I said, thanks very much, but I really do like being in leadership roles, and stayed in executive positions. So I never practiced, but it's a choice I've absolutely never regretted. Eventually, I was offered an opportunity, seemingly out of left field, to move to a much, much smaller organisation, which was, at the time, a growing consultancy providing cognitive-based safety training to the mining and resources industry. If anyone here has heard of the ZIP program, and I'm sure plenty of people might have because it's been very active in Queensland, that was us. I had a wonderful time as CEO travelling the mines across the world, including underground platinum mines in South Africa, which was an experience in itself, coal mines here in Queensland and elsewhere, diamond mines in the Arctic and iron ore mines in the Kalahari. Immensely gratifying period in my career, and the opportunity to lead and grow a business was one I'd thoroughly encourage if you're ever given the opportunity. Fast forward to today, and a few years ago I left my executive career behind to become a full-time non-executive director. Some of the boards I sit on operate in the mining and resources sector, others have no connection whatsoever. On some of these boards, I'm the only female director. On others, I have fellow women around the table. Now, just as important as sitting on boards and speaking at conferences and getting degrees and travelling to amazing locations, I try and drop my kids off at school whenever I can, but not nearly as often as they would like. I try to walk the dog, but I often don't get the chance. I travel a lot, and I've been known to share meals with my family over FaceTime. I forget my children's friends' names. I have no idea how to work our TV remotes. Please don't tell my family that because I never admit it, but I really have no idea. I never seem to be able to make it to lunches with my girlfriends. I think the local sushi place is only in business because the number of times we eat out because I haven't got time to make dinner. I outsource our ironing, and I never call my parents enough. So I'm far from fabulous. And I think as women, we have a particular tendency to hold ourselves up to incredibly high levels of expectations of being perfect. And we're not. Most of the time, we're incredibly ordinary, struggling with the same challenges as every other woman out there. And that is absolutely okay. So now that you know a little bit more about me, probably a bit too much, I'd like to share with you the advice I would have given my younger self if I could go back in time. Too often as women, we're offered 10 tips for success or 5 ways to get ahead. And I'd rather think about perhaps what I could have learned from myself or from my own experiences, and hopefully some of them might resonate for you. To set the scene, 10 years ago, my life looked and felt completely different. I had 2 toddlers, was working full-time, wondering how to balance everything in my life. I managed to feel guilty most of the time for leaving my children with someone else while I was working, and I was incredibly anxious to get somewhere. I was never sure where or why or how, I just wanted to get there. So the first thing I would have said to myself is to say yes to opportunities as they come along. Now, when I look back at all the opportunities I've ever been offered, whether they be jobs or studying or having children, my default thought has always been, couldn't possibly do it. I worry about what's going to be involved, whether I'll fail, whether I'll end up making a bad decision. I wonder why they're asking me. Surely there's someone more qualified out there, more suited to the opportunity. Many of you in this room would be aware of, and no doubt have experienced, the well-known imposter syndrome that many women in particular struggle with, regardless of whatever the opportunity is that you're being offered. So here is what I would have told myself. Actually, I probably would have had to have yelled it at myself because at the time I would have thought I knew better. And I would have said, stop trying to predict what might be around the corner or what might go wrong. You have no reason to think you'll fail, so seize every experience and go for it 100%. Continue to be yourself and trust that you'll be successful as you, not as the person anyone else thinks that you need to be. And say yes. While you may not think you're ready or you don't have the precise experience needed, trust that it will come. You will be successful. You will become a better leader for being willing to learn. And even if you don't see your potential, clearly others do. Trust in them. I would have also said to myself that trying to be perfect is exhausting. I would hazard a guess that the vast majority of people listening today have a streak or perhaps even a huge swathe of perfectionism in them. It can be addictive and a powerful tool in achieving all we do, yet like everything, it has a dark side. Knowing this, I would have said to myself 10 years ago, allow yourself to be a beginner. No one starts out as excellent. And be kind, learn from your mistakes and move on. What is guaranteed is you're bound to make more mistakes, so there's just no point in worrying. I must admit at this point, I read this to my husband last night. He was drinking a glass of wine and he actually choked on his wine. He coughed. And he goes, are you actually going to listen to your own advice at any point? So clearly I have a bit of learning to do. I'm feeling like a bit of a fraud sharing this, so we're all in it together, still working on it. The third piece of advice, which I think I have done better at, is seeking feedback. I would have said to myself that as tough as it might be, listen to any feedback you get respectfully and learn from it. I'd remind myself that it's the people you seek advice from who offer you opportunities and teach you lessons along the way, who are still your valued mentors in your life 10 years later. Listen to them, thank them, appreciate the time they put aside to help you achieve all you set out to achieve. And fourth, I would have told my younger self that you cannot do this alone. And if you should be so fortunate as to achieve your goals, whatever they may be, you have a responsibility to help others get there too. To the women nominated for an award today, to past swimmers who are here as well, you are leaders in your industry. Whatever your profession, other women and men will look up to you to role model how they can achieve their goals. Take that responsibility seriously. But rest assured, you're not alone. Everyone here today, whether you're here in Brisbane or listening in Blackwater or Moranbah, has achieved something in their lives. We are all more fortunate than someone else. International Women's Day is a great reminder that we each have a responsibility to help other women however we can. Whether that's to help a woman you know apply for a trade they've always considered starting, or helping a friend find a safer environment to live in at home, or encouraging a woman you work with to accept a promotion she's been offered but isn't sure she can do. Help other women wherever you can. And if we all reflect on our past 10 years, of course there have been challenges, of course there are things we wish we could have done differently, things we've said and later regretted, opportunities we may have turned down and wished we'd accepted, people we're no longer in touch with that deserved our gratitude and time, and lessons we never seemed to learn. Yet over the past 10 years, we have also taken responsibility for our lives. We've made choices every day to become better at whatever it is we do. We've lived our lives with a deep sense of purpose, true to our core values and integrity. We've looked to empower and provide opportunities to those around us, and we've built enduring relationships in all facets of our life. And most importantly, we've dedicated time to developing ourselves because we know that being a leader, whatever our role, takes a lifetime of personal growth and learning. Our experience in becoming more skilled, more aware of who we are, and understanding how we role model to others never ends. Over the next 10 years, there will be times to be inspiring and times to be tough. There's going to be times when you'll need to delegate and times to immerse yourself in the details. There'll be times for you to make grand public statements and times when private, authentic conversations are required. So we need to continue to support one another. We need to listen to one another and respect each other's perspective. We need to help others who may not be in a position to seize opportunities like we can, and yet who have all the skills and qualities and experience we need around us. We need to be able to say to ourselves in 10 years' time that we learnt more over the 10 years just gone than we did in the 10 years previous. So on this, the 106th anniversary of International Women's Day, I want to acknowledge all of us ordinary women, role modelling to others how to pursue all it is that we wish to achieve. If we love what we do, we are far more likely to succeed at whatever we turn our minds to, which ultimately will help others who come behind us. Thank you.